Good evening. My name is Clark Morris. I'm the Vice President of Advancement at William Jewell College, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to our celebration of achievement. This is something we've been doing for 77 years, and tonight is one of my favorite functions of this week. It is our Student Leadership and Alumni Honoree Forum, and normally we do this all gathered around a great dinner over in the Union, but we're thankful that we at least have this technology that we're able to be gathering with our student leaders and with our alumni honorees, and we'll get to hear from them and hear their stories of their times here on the Hill tonight. So we have a few participants, student leaders, that will be taking us through tonight's event, and I want to give you just a brief introduction to them. Our moderator tonight is Olivia Eggleston. She is a senior nonprofit leadership and acting major with a business administration minor. Giving the invocation here in just a moment is Jack Still. He's a senior economics and political science major here at Jewell. And then to close the evening with our benediction will be Savannah Holly. Savannah is a senior majoring in both Oxford's Literature and Theory and French. So I will turn it over to Jack to get us started.
The late civil rights icon and Congressman John Lewis said that nothing can stop the power of a committed and determined people to make a difference in our society. Why? Because human beings are the most dynamic link to the divine on this planet. With this sentiment in our mind and hearts, I invite you to join me in this invocation, praying in your own faith and tradition as I do in mine, as we prepare to honor our esteemed alumni and student leaders here tonight. Dear Lord, on behalf of all who are gathered here today, thank you for providing us an opportunity to celebrate those we are grateful for in our lives.
Yes.
We ask that you continue to bless the special community that we have here at Jewell, building critical thinkers and leaders that are capable of creating positive change in this world. Do not let us lose sight of all that you have given us and all that you have planned for our lives. Grant us wisdom and show us your grace. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Jack. As I mentioned, we've been celebrating achievement on the Hill for 77 years. So all the way back to 1944. So we have nearly 400 achievers. And some of you are joining us tonight along with this year's class, and I want to welcome you. When I read through the list, it is incredibly impressive to look at what you've done and the meaningful lives that you've created after you left the Hill and the meaningful life you led when you were on the Hill. We also invite leaders from our student body who are beginning to show the signs that they someday might also be recognized as an achiever. And so we have leaders from the following groups with us tonight: Alpha Lambda Delta, our Cardinal Blazers, Cardinal Hosts, Emerging Leaders, Greek Presidents, Mortar Board, Phi Epsilon Honor Society, Presidential Scholars, Prior Leadership Fellows, Resident Assistants, SAC Representatives, Spirit Team, Student Organization Presidents, and of course, Student Senate. So thank you for joining us, and thank you for showing leadership on this campus. So I want to introduce to you students and past achievers, this year's class of achievers, of our alumni achievers. It's an impressive class with amazing individuals, and we are so thankful to be able to have them with us tonight and get to hear their stories and their voices tonight. So there are longer descriptions in your program, but let me introduce to you first Dimple Dilibelia, class of 1997. She's a senior advisor for workforce enrichment, refugee asylum, and international operations. She's the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services founder and CEO of Roots in the Clouds. Welcome, Dimple. It's going to be great. We're great to have you with us, and we are honored to be able to recognize you tonight and get to hear from you tonight. Our second honoree is Mike Frazier, class of 1986. Mike is the current president and CEO of Reese Nichols Realtors. I should say Dimple, I think, is coming to us from Washington, D.C. I believe Mike is coming to us from Maui, the island of Maui. So our honorees are all over the country. And then our third honoree, well, welcome, Mike. Our third honoree is Calvin Osborne, class of 1985. Calvin is the Associate Director, Office of Federal and Regional Affairs, Executive Office of the Mayor of Washington, D.C. I believe he's coming to us from D.C. Welcome, Calvin. And our fourth honoree is Jim Richardson, class of 1990. He's the president of the PGA of America, the Senior Vice President of Operations for Troon, the golf management company. So welcome, Jim. And Jim is in Scottsdale, is that right? Yeah, okay. So these are the class of 2021 Celebration of Achievement alumni honorees. And so I will turn the forum over to our moderator, Olivia. Welcome, Olivia.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to thank you and all of our honorees for taking the time to speak with us tonight about their time on the Hill, as well as their time and experiences after leaving the Hill. I hope all of my fellow students have taken the time and opportunity to watch Achievement Day Convocation online today. All our honorees had some wonderful words and wisdom to offer. I very much enjoyed each of your messages, and thank you all for sharing those words with us. I'll be asking you all the same questions to begin and end the forum with some specific questions for each of you along the way. Now, think back to a time you were on the Hill. We have all heard the stories about the alarm clocks ringing during chapel, haunted buildings, and streaking across the quad. What stories do you have to tell? Mr. Richardson, I would like to start with you. I understand that your nickname is Jimmer. Is it okay if I call you that?
Absolutely.
Perfect. All right, what story do you have to share with us, Jimmer?
Well, first, Olivia, it's a pleasure to be with you and all the other honorees. Told this story earlier, but I had the pleasure of being a classmate of both of your parents, Randy and Cindy. So it's an honor to be grilled or interviewed by you tonight as well, too. So please give them my best. There's so many stories. I think anyone through their college experience, whether they're academic, through their social groups that they're in, or if they're involved in any type of other clubs or sports activities. I think the Hill gave us an opportunity, no matter what your interest was, to be involved in other things as well, to kind of broaden your horizons, so to speak. I think of things like, Tatler and activities that might have been outside someone's comfort zone, or be involved with others that you were classmates who might have been heavily involved in, whether it be the choir, whether it be on the debate team, whether it be in another club that you didn't know anything about and didn't have any type of interest until a friend of yours or someone that you became friends with got heavily involved in one of those areas. So for me, coming from a very small town in Northeast Missouri, being able to be exposed to and kind of broaden my horizons were the things that started to allow me to look at not only myself, but look at the world a little bit differently, on a bit bigger scope, a bit broader scope. So whether it was, activities through sports, playing football and golf, I got to travel a little bit around the Midwest for some of those activities, or going to cheer on, fraternity brother David Israelite, who won a national debate championship and went on to some great things after he graduated. So for me, it was those, experiences that I did not have growing up, that the Hill really exposed me to be part of, or to witness on someone else's behalf. So hopefully those that are listening, that are students, you take advantage of every opportunity that you have, and open yourself up to things that you may not be comfortable with, and go outside your comfort zone a bit, because it not only will give you more experiences while you're at William Jewell, but it will broaden the way you think about things and opportunities as you leave the Hill and you go on to a career in whatever you choose to do.
Mr. Frazier, it is your turn. Can you please share a story with us?
Well, gosh, I think there's a lot of stories I probably can't tell in this forum, but I think the one thing that I remember the most from my days at William Jewell is along the same lines that Jim just discussed, is I got to be involved in a lot of different things. And I think a lot of times you go to college and you don't know what your direction, what your path is going to be. And I think if I would have gone to a bigger university, I would have got lost in everything that goes on in a large college. And giving me the opportunity to be on the Hill and in a liberal arts education where I can get exposed to a lot of different things. And the teachers really took time to help me through my quest to decide what my path was going to be. I think that's the beauty of what William Jewell provides. You get to experience a lot of different things. Jim just rattled off a bunch of them, and I agree with all those. I mean, I went to William Jewell to play basketball, and I only played for 2 years, but then I fell in love with everything that's there, and got to build great relationships and formulate the person that I was going to be and would carry me through my career. So, you know, I mentioned in my video that there was a rock band in Gano Chapel at one time, and I think it was the Romantics, but it was quite wild. I think the student government maybe got in a little bit of hot water after that was over. It would never happen again, but in the chapel there was a rock band. So that's probably the best story I've got.
Thank you, Mr. Frazier. Ms. Davalia, it is your turn. What Jewell memory would you like to relate?
Also, first of all, I thank you again for having me as well, and congratulations to all of my fellow honorees. So Mike, I will say there were other rock bands later on, so that I remember very fondly. But yeah, I mean, similar to Jim and Mike, I think it's really hard to just pick one story because the college experience is full of so many stories. That's what your whole experience is about. For me, most of my kind of memories definitely relate to my time in Oxbridge, especially being overseas at Oxford. And then I was kind of a nerd. I really loved the fine arts program. And so I think it's called the Jewell Harriman series now. And that was actually my work study job. And so I spent a lot of time like going to all the performances, and that was a really fun thing for me, and at least the people that I hung out with, to be able to go to a performance and then go out and, you know, it felt so grown up, and it felt so cultured. And it really left an impact because I have been a patron of the arts ever since. It really left quite an impact. But the one story that I continue to tell to this day, which was, I think like a quintessential college experience that you wouldn't normally get other than being in college, is that towards the end of my senior year, I was, you know, because I was in Oxbridge, I, you know, had finished up my exams. I had some time to kind of wait until graduation, and Dr. Armstrong called me into his office one day to let me know that the Clinton campaign, this is dating me now, but was actually, they were campaigning at the time, and they were going to be in town. And he said, you know, they're looking for volunteers. And so I was like, all right, cool, I'll go down and volunteer. So a few of us went down to volunteer, and we were ushered into this conference room in like a hotel or whatever. And a few minutes later, like all these Secret Service guys marched in, and they were like, all right, everybody, listen up, listen up. This is the motorcade pre-brief, whatever. And I was like, the motorcade? And literally every person in that room was going to drive a car in the motorcade, including me. So I actually got to spend a day. I got to drive up onto the tarmac, see the president arrive in Air Force One. And then I got to drive around a bunch of press people with the presidential motorcade all day, which was incredible. I mean, who gets to do that? And so that was one of the stories that really stood out for me as I was kind of thinking about this. But yeah, just something you wouldn't normally get to do. So.
Well, that is an amazing story to tell. Thank you for sharing that. And Mr. Osborne, you will be our last storyteller. Well, you can go ahead and share a story with us.
All right, thank you so much. And I can also take a moment to say congratulations to my fellow honorees, and thank you, Olivia, and thank the William Jewell College family, my Cardinal family. I've been away for quite a while here on the East Coast, and so it's really good to reconnect with my Cardinal family. Let me thank Dr. Holloman for that wonderful introduction that he did for me, and also like to thank one of my very best friends, Reverend Dr. Vernon P. Howard, for recommending me for this amazing honor. I really am touched by this honor to receive this. And when your alma mater says something like this, they really saying we're proud of you, and that makes me feel really, really warm inside to know that the people at William Jewell College are proud of me and proud of what I've done throughout my life. And so thank you all for that. And when it comes to stories or memories, maybe one of my fondest memories of William Jewell stems from my political campaign to become a part of student government. I came into Liberty from Phoenix, Arizona, and I was already a junior. I was a transfer in from a community college. And I wanted people to get to know me. And like some of you all, I wanted to get sort of outside of my comfort zone, if you will. And so somehow the one or two people I had met, I allowed one of them to convince me to run for student government. And I'm thinking, I don't know anyone and no one knows me. There's no way this makes any sense. So she had a really good idea. She was an artist there. She said, why don't I draw a picture of you and put it on in the student union in various places so people will know who you are. And I thought, what a lousy idea to put my face all over the place. But she was a very fine artist, and she just did a little pencil sketch of my face, and she did 3 or 4 of them. And I couldn't believe it. It was, to me, it looked hideous. When I think about it, even today, I think what a hideous drawing. But she was very, very good, actually. And the few friends I had, as I said, they began poking at me and laughing at me and pointing at my picture. They were cheering and jeering and laughing the whole way through. They stopped laughing when I won. Okay. And so for a few drawings that were spread out across the campus that I hated, they were very effective. And once I won that position, I didn't want those drawings to come down. So I left them up there just to give them what for. So that's one of my fondest memories of being at Jewell.
Well, thank you all for sharing those great memories. We appreciate hearing those stories. That's the stories that make up Jewell. And now I would like to focus on some more career advice questions. Mr. Frazier, did you know what career you wanted to pursue when you came to Jewell? And how did the Jewell experience impact that decision?
You know, like I said before, I really didn't know what I wanted to do, even after I graduated. It was, I talked to a lot of young people today about that exact same thing. I don't think at 18 years old or even at 21, 22 years old, you really know what your career path is. Most people don't. So what I think the best experience that I had at Jewell was to get me exposed to a lot of different things. And, you know, throughout my career, I've kind of lived by three basic things. And one is to look at interesting opportunities and go head on into those. So after my first job, I didn't have great grades coming out of Jewell. So I had an accounting degree and I knew everybody needed an accountant. So I went into the banking industry. And after my first job of just processing loans in a bank, I knew I couldn't do that for 45 years. So I needed to decide to take different paths that I thought were interesting. So at least if I had a job that I could get up and get out of bed and go in with some passion, it would make my path easier. And that's how I continued through the banking and went into, was at Commerce Bank in Kansas City, and no one wanted to run the payroll department. I said I would do it. That got me into Hallmark Cards, doing the same thing there. And, you know, I just continued to look for ways that I could expand my background and my experiences with something that was fun and entertaining. And I think as people look jobs, I think that has twofold ramifications from it. One, again, you get to go into work and you have a good time doing what you're doing, but it also, if you show passion for what you're doing, your superiors are going to look upon that as favorable, and hopefully you can get promoted that way better. And I think two of the things for people that are looking to do things in the world is to take initiative and look for things that they can do in their companies and make sure that those jobs are stuff that help the company move forward. And then finally is every job now is a sales job, whether you're in accounting or actual sales or doing whatever you're doing, you have to sell yourself and you have to sell your company. And so at the heart of all sales is building relationships with people, and you need to have good relationships with your coworkers, with the people you report to, and the people outside your company, so that you can expand your horizons and find that really good niche for you. If you looked at my career path, it's gone in down different paths every single turn, but at every turn I looked at those jobs and said, am I going to enjoy this? Am I going to have fun, or am I not going to have fun? And that's a lot easier path to go than chasing dollars. That's for sure.
Mr. Frazier, that is some great advice to give us. Mr. Osborne, can you answer the same question? Did you have a career plan when you arrived at Jewell?
Well, I did have an outline of a career plan. I always knew that I wanted to be an attorney. Since I was about 12, I wanted to become a lawyer. It seems that I've always been interested in that whole justice space. And all of my heroes, even as a 12-year-old, were lawyers. People like Fred Gray, who was the attorney for Martin Luther King and handled most of the civil rights litigation across the South during the 60s. People like Nelson Mandela. I was aware even in the 70s as a 12 and 13-year-old who Nelson Mandela was, an attorney in South Africa who became a president and led a movement there to free 19 to 20 million Black Africans in the country that they own, and to eradicate something called apartheid, which was a big issue when I was in college. I remember being involved with a group that was trying to help eradicate apartheid out of South Africa when I was at William Jewell. Thurgood Marshall was a hero of mine, the attorney who handled the Brown versus Board of Education case that integrated, at least purportedly anyway, integrated schools all across America. I owe him a debt of gratitude, the late Supreme Court Justice, because he's also the attorney who integrated the University of Missouri Kansas City School of Law with a lawsuit called Missouri versus Gaines. And so I've always wanted to be a lawyer, and William Jewell College helped me to sharpen my focus. Being on the Hill allowed me to recognize that if I really wanted to achieve something and to do something that was great, I needed to make sure that each of my days reflected my goals. I mean, it doesn't make sense to say, well, hey, I'd like to be a physician if you don't spend any time preparing for it. So I just basically broke it down into small pieces, and I made sure that every month, every week, and every day, I did at least something that I thought furthered my goals to becoming an attorney. I grew in Liberty up on the Hill academically. I grew personally, and I became proficient at a number of things, communicating both orally and in writing. And I owe a lot of that growth to being on the Hill there at William Jewell College. I just had some wonderful instructors who cared a lot about what we did, and I just think it was a great opportunity. For those of you who are there now, I would just encourage you to soak it up, enjoy every opportunity, take in every experience that you can, because they'll carry you through the rest of your life. And so as I look back at my life, I know that For me, it was just 2 years. The 2 years that I spent in Liberty was pivotal. It was critical for the success that I've been able to attain. So.
Thank you, Mr. Osborne. Ms. DeBalia, did you have a career path mapped out when you arrived to campus, or was it something that evolved over your time at Jewell?
Yeah, that's another great question. I was very much like Mike, actually. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And honestly, I left college not entirely sure what I was going to do yet either. But I will say that I think that there were a lot of experiences that I had in Jewell along the way that really planted seeds that led to kind of where I ended up. And, similar to what Mike said, which I really appreciate, is this idea that, to find those things for which you have a passion and to just follow like where the path leads. And I think that that's a really important piece of it, because oftentimes we're so caught up in this idea that we have to have this path and we've got to stick to it. And, and that can lead to feeling stuck sometimes. Whereas if you're kind of open, it changes things a lot. And so there's a really great speech, a commencement address that Steve Jobs gave in 2005 to Stanford University. And he talked about how, there are things in our lives that happen sometimes that just don't make sense in the moment. And you really can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them when you look backwards. And so you have to trust that those dots are somehow going to connect in the future. And so I think that there were a lot of experiences that I had at Jewell that really, when I look back now, I can see how they led me to where I am now. And so, for example, I think, I learned a lot about being curious and compassionate. My first semester of college, I spent a lot of time, again, because I was in Oxbridge, with really classical thinkers like Socrates and Aristotle and Plato. But I have to say, it was really it was tough studying their works, but their work really sparked this curiosity in me that really actually remains to today. And I also just, being around the people that I was around, just felt this sense of wanting to connect with others on a really deeper and human level. I talked in my convocation remarks about Dr. Chance's Intro to the Bible class and the impact that that had on me. But it was really through that experience that I really learned to notice my own biases. And I was able to start opening myself up to new perspectives. And it was really the first time that I could really see the humanity in other people around me, who may have been different from me or who had different beliefs than me. And so that was one piece of it. And then I think this idea of kind of community connection and service at a global level. And so, being able to study overseas was incredible, and being immersed in a culture that's different from yours, it just opens up a lot of things. And so that year abroad, I got to live and study in a different country, but I also got to travel a lot in the area. And so one of the places I ended up was in Greece. And because of the philosophers I had studied, I really wanted to go there. And it was incredible. I still remember, getting up to the top of the Acropolis the very first time I went and just feeling so connected. And throughout that whole trip, I just was resolved that, I knew I was going to come back there one day. And I did. I ended up going back there as a diplomat 13 years later. And so, I think that when you live a life that's kind of structured and privileged, sometimes it can actually close you off. And so being open to these new experiences can just be so liberating and open up avenues that you didn't even know existed. And then the last thing I think for me was through kind of, again, that Oxbridge experience was this idea of agency and control over my life, right? For the first time, I was out there on my own. I was getting to work with my professors to create my tutorials. And so I got to be really creative and look at all kinds of new areas that I hadn't really explored. And, it ended up leading me, working with Dr. Chance, ended up leading me to write a thesis about the caste system in India and how it was impacting modern day politics and economics. And that was not something I ever thought I would be interested in. But through doing that, it just opened up, this desire to learn more about what was happening in world politics. And I think that all of these things together, the curiosity, the desire to be connected at a global level, and also this not wanting to do things the way that it's always been done, just because it's always been done a certain way. All of those things, I think, really led me to end up kind of getting to where I was in working with refugees and asylum seekers, because all those kind of little seeds had been planted along the way that ultimately led me there. And I got to spend 10 years interviewing people, which was incredible, and took me all over the world. And for every trip I took, every interview that I did, every person that I interacted with, every single one of them provided me with new perspectives and really just taught me lessons about life that I was not going to get out of any textbooks or through school. They were really just things that you learn once you're out there. And so I'm super grateful for all of those experiences that I had that I think ultimately led me to where I ended up. So.
Thank you for sharing that and how your path has evolved, and that it's okay not to know exactly where you're going at one point in time, but eventually will work out. Jimmer, when you came to Jewell, did you have any idea what you had planned for your future?
Well, Olivia, I can honestly say I don't think I spent any time studying Socrates or Plato while I was on the Hill. So that was a bypass for me. But no, I really didn't have any idea. I grew up in a very large family. I had 4 older siblings who all had gone on to college, and they graduated in different areas around the country. And we're all in different lines of work. So we didn't have anything that was a path for us, you might say. And I think there was a little bit of my upbringing. My father was a college football coach, but he also in college was a physical education major, but he was also an English minor, and those two don't seem to go together. And they really preached to us that you could kind of follow whatever path you wanted to, but whatever you did, do it to the best of your abilities. Make sure you put 100% into it, and make sure you gave it your all. And if you found yourself in a situation that you just weren't passionate about, then you should remove yourself from it. You should do something else. Don't get caught up in spinning your wheels to the point that you're going to spend a lot of time and a lot of effort getting bogged down by something that you really don't want to be involved with, whether that was a job, a career, a company, the people that were your friends, the company that you keep. That they really taught us those lessons as we grew up. So I was always involved in sports from a very young age. I was always exposed to them, kind of the team atmosphere. Didn't really know what I wanted to go into. I looked up to my older siblings. One was a lawyer, still is to this day. One worked on Wall Street for a number of years. And others went into other businesses. But what I saw from them was the work ethic and the things that they were passionate about and that they wanted to get involved in. And so that eventually led me to stay kind of in sports. First, I went into hospitality. I always gravitated to people that I thought in companies that I could learn more from, that could teach me more, give me more opportunities and really round out my knowledge. I spent a lot of time working for Mr. Marriott, the Marriott Hotel Company in hospitality. Spent a number of years working for Mr. Kohler with the Kohler Plumbing company that is a worldwide global company, and now working for a gentleman, Dana Garmany, who started what is now the largest golf management company in the world. So I always gravitated towards individuals and companies that could teach me more than I knew. It would give me an opportunity to use those learnings to advance my own career and give me an opportunity to work within kind of that team setting. So I've always gravitated to larger groups, larger companies that I could be part of that team, but also gave me an opportunity to kind of lead a team as well too. Those were things that I was always passionate about. Those were things that I always gravitated to. I've been very fortunate to have those opportunities. I think that's why I gravitated when I was on the Hill to different organizations that were group settings as well, whether that be sports organizations, whether that be the Greek system, that were part of something bigger than just yourself or your own personal accolades. So I was kind of brought up that way as in our family setting as a child. There was a lot of the experiences I gravitated to while I was at William Jewell. And really, it's been my entire career, and always just working for an individual or a company that always gave me opportunities to continue to advance. So I've been very fortunate in that regard. You hear the saying about find something that you're passionate, that you love, you never have to work a day in your life. And I was very fortunate to find something I'm passionate about and I love. I can say though, that there's a lot of days where it sure feels like work, but there's a lot of days where it's extremely rewarding. So I've been very fortunate, and hopefully that continues until the day I retire.
Thank you for sharing those insights. I'm sure myself and my fellow classmates and friends are glad to hear that it's okay not to have a defined path, and it's okay for that path to change throughout our lifetime, and it's simply okay not to know at a period of time. Now we'll move on to our last query question before we turn to individual questions. And this question is seeking advice for my graduating class. So we will be leaving the Hill less than a month, and I really want to obtain some answers in regards to our time after the Hill. Ms. Dabalia, what is one vital piece of information you have learned in your first work experiences that you did not learn at your time at Jewell?
Oh, thanks. Well, I would say this is probably not so much something I learned in my first work experience, because I think, you learn things over the years. And so, but I think over the course of my career, like one thing that I've really really taken to heart is this idea of the importance of really being present and enjoying kind of the journey along the way. And so I was one, and there really, like the way that I describe this is to just let go and look down, because there was a time I was in Zimbabwe, and I was in this plastic chair. I was strapped into this plastic chair on a microlight flight over Victoria Falls. And the pilot for the flight, and I use the term pilot very lightly because, I use the term flight very lightly because it was literally two plastic chairs that were tied to a hang glider with a propeller. And then there was an ex-Zimbabwean fighter pilot who was actually piloting the flight. So I do not take him lightly. I was grateful it was him, because he could probably have landed us anywhere. But we had traveled to Victoria Falls because we were in Zambia. We were interviewing refugees and we had a weekend off. And so we traveled out there, and I had this like sudden inclination to say yes to life. And my flight was literally the last one to go up before they shut things down because the wind had started to kick in. And so it was super bumpy. And so as we started to climb higher into the air and we turned to go over the falls, I could hear the pilot talking to me in the headphones. And he just kept saying, "It's okay, we're fine, we're fine." And finally, he's like, "I assure you, please just take a breath, let go and look down." And I finally did. And it was just incredible. And I think this is a really good kind of metaphor in life, right? That we spend so much of our time either, just focused on that fear, and, we're either comparing ourselves or our successes to the people around us, or we're too scared to take a step and do something different or do something that is, unexpected. And, this can often, again, keep us stuck or just set us up to ultimately fail because we never even take that chance. And so all this to say, one of the things that I think I've really learned is that there'll be a lot of times in life when we're really scared or struggling with the uncertainty, especially that lies ahead. And when that happens, just try to remember to take a breath, just let go and be in the moment, and really try to allow yourself to enjoy the process. Because honestly, what I've learned is it's often the most beautiful and memorable part. When you get to the actual thing, you just are usually there for a few minutes and then you've moved on. So really enjoying that part along the way.
Thank you, Ms. Dabalia. That was some really great insight of really paying attention to what you're working for at the moment or experiencing at the moment. Mr. Frazier, the same question for you. What is something that you wish you had known before you started your first job?
Well, I think, there's a great quote by Theodore Roosevelt. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And I've really jumped into that over the last 10 or 12 years, that you have to care about what you're doing. You have to care about the people that you're doing it with, or your experience is not going to be as great, and you're not going to build the camaraderie that has to happen within every company for it to be successful. So we really make it a point within Reese Nichols to make sure everybody knows how much we care about them and how much we care about our clients and how much we care about the people that are buying and selling homes for us. And that's something that's, you're in a competitive environment when you're in college. And I tried to play basketball for a couple of years. You're always taught to be competitive against each other and always win the day. But if I would have known then that it's more about caring for people and building relationships and trusting in each other to build a great company or even a great department or whatever you're pursuing, I think I probably would have got to where I was going quicker. But it's very important that, especially in leadership roles, and a lot of the people here are looking to be leaders, that you really take into account what you're doing. Are you doing it for the right purposes, and how does that affect the people that you're dealing with?
Thank you for that, Mr. Frazier. Mr. Osborne, was there some aspect of working life that you did not feel prepared for?
Well, I'd have to say yes at this point, although while I was on the Hill, I didn't particularly think of myself as a person who was sheltered or naive or anything of that nature. But by the time I got out to begin to practice law, I realized how many sharks there really are, and it could be something that's unique to the practice of law, even in a Midwestern town like Kansas City. And I think all that is even highlighted even more so in a city like Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. is to lawyers what probably New York is to musicians, or L.A. is to actors. You come to Washington and find a way to make it, no matter no matter what you do, whether it's private industry, business, or even in politics, you will know that you have actually earned it. I just don't think that I was completely aware of how vicious the workplace could be. I knew that it would be profit driven, but I just don't think I had quite a sense coming from William Jewell. I won't say I was sheltered there, William Jewell, or that the people who are there now are somewhat sheltered, but I can tell you that it gets exponentially tougher to deal, I think, with people when you leave the Hill. Not everyone has, that wholesome liberal arts education, and I just wasn't prepared to know that there would be people, even in my own law firm, who were cheering for you to fail. To me, it didn't make any sense, but I know that was in fact the case. So there's some very organizational behavior. It can be like that sometimes. Office politics is something that anyone who gets out and starts to work in an environment, you'll have to learn to negotiate. People who aren't necessarily, people who see you as a competitor and want perhaps what you want in terms of responsibility or opportunities. People who look for your weaknesses and try to see if they can unsettle you in some way. But to Mike's point, the competition is fierce. Sports, I think, prepares you about as much as anything else can, because as you were saying, we get a sense for game day. We get a sense for how to prepare in sports, and if you can take those lessons and transfer them into to business or law or whatever it is you want to do, you can be successful. But the one thing I would say to the students would be, really the only thing you have, no matter how much money you make or where you go, is your good name. If you have a good name already, do everything you can to keep that. Someone work for you to be in that position to have that good name. So remember who you are when you get out of William Jewell. Remember what has gotten you there. Keep the fortitude that you have that you have. Don't make sure that you don't sink into an abyss with the folks who other folks out there who don't seem to necessarily have a lot of good stuff in mind. And don't try to cut corners, because you'll get caught. And the people who I saw cutting corners along the way in various places, seems like almost all of them, crashed and burned somewhere. And so I would encourage people there to know who you are, stick to who you are, even when you see things around you that if you believe that things aren't going your way, or other people who are not doing things the right way are still getting ahead, hold on to who you are as an individual. In the long run, it will profit you as a human being.
Thank you, Mr. Osborne, for that advice. Jimmer, what was something that surprised you when you entered the workforce?
Well, I think it's how much you don't know. You think you do. I was one of those young individuals that thought I knew a lot, but you realize pretty quickly that although you can take classes, you can have unbelievable professors, and they can prepare you to a certain degree, I don't think experience is something that you can gain until you have it. So you have to go through different work experiences, different life experiences. You got to go through some of those things to really know. So not having those experiences and knowing that I needed to get more experience, both personally and professionally. But then, that old adage of, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, you should listen twice as much as you speak. I think especially before you have that experience, it's important to find mentors and find people that you can learn from, that are willing to spend the time teaching you, spend the time letting you know what your strengths are, but also being honest with you about what your weaknesses are, things that you need to work on. I was surprised by that starting out, trying to build a career that, there were things I didn't know, and I had to realize what my shortcomings were. And I really had to make sure I found time to develop and cultivate relationships with people that were my mentors early on, and quite frankly, still are to this day, that continue to teach me lessons that help me every day. So that was probably the biggest surprise. But as I got into a career, I've been very fortunate to, sports and golf brings a lot of people together from a lot of different backgrounds. I've had the opportunity to meet, political officials, sports celebrities, titans of industry, individuals from around the world. And what you realize in those situations, you don't need to be scared or overwhelmed. Although they might have a lot more experiences than you do, you have experiences that they don't. You may not realize it at the time, but you've got some type of knowledge, you've got some type of insight, some type of experience that they don't. And it's that common, connection on whether it's politics, whether it's sports, whether it's something else that you can find that common ground, that common bond, and develop that relationship from there. So I learned that through a mentor very early on, that you may not feel you're the smartest person in the room. I never was an individual that felt that I was the best at anything. I thought I was pretty good at a lot of things, but what I was really good at was paying attention to my mentors and trying to develop that relationship and actually take their advice, even when at times it was harsh, to take that advice to their real heart and use it as a learning experience to try to help as I move forward.
Thank you all so much for that advice. I'm sure we have all learned something new to take on with us when we leave Jewell. Now I have some more specific questions related to you guys personally to get to know you guys a little bit better on a deeper level. Ms. Abalia, we'll start with you. This one relates to a career in the international aspect. Do you have any recommendations to give a student today who would be interested in an international career?
Yeah, so first of all, I just say go for it. There are so many opportunities out there right now to make a difference in the world. If you follow any kind of global events, you know that there's a lot happening. And depending on your area of interest, there is likely an organization that is doing work overseas. And so, I think non-governmental organizations are a great place to start. You can take a look at, what organizations are out there that support your particular areas of interest. And most of them have, internships available. They have entry-level opportunities available. So definitely look for those and apply. The UN, which is like one of the largest international employers, which has so many different branches within it. They have a junior program officer program. And that's a really great way to kind of get your foot in the door. The federal government is a great opportunity. That's kind of the path that I've taken. You've got State Department with Foreign Service. You've got my agency, and we do, again, the work with refugees and asylum. So refugee officers, asylum officers, those are great opportunities to have that chance to travel and actually do work that's going to be impactful. For people coming right out of school, as most of you are, there are a lot of internships within the government. There's something called the Pathways program, which I would really recommend looking into. And there's also a professional management fellowship. I think it used to be called the Presidential Management Fellowship, but that's a great opportunity because it's very competitive. But if you're able to get in, you have the opportunity to work at multiple agencies, and then you can choose kind of where you want to land. Peace Corps is another great way to get some experience. But kind of to what Jim was just talking about, I think there's nothing more useful than networking and really finding a mentor and really using your resources. So, I personally have never turned away anyone who's come to me asking for advice or asking to be connected. For those of us who have been in, all of our respective jobs or career sectors, we're probably pretty well connected by now. And so really, find those people. Alumni networks are great because if you reach out to one of us, we're probably going to go ahead and take the time to sit down and chat with you and give you some advice and let you know what opportunities are out there. And if we're able to, most of us are happy to try to make those connections to help you along your way. And so I think that that's actually a really important one to keep in mind. Because I think that that's sometimes a much easier way to kind of get in somewhere, just to at least get people to know who you are. So yeah, that's kind of what I would say.
Thank you, Ms. Dabalia, for giving us insight to how one can pursue that type of career path, but overall, how one can pursue a meaningful career path with mentors and guidance. Mr. Frazier, we will move on to you. I couldn't help but notice your long-term involvement in the Down Syndrome Guild of Kansas City. Can you share with us Guild's purpose and your dedication to the organization?
Sure. And I think one of the things that you learn on the Hill is to give back and to be involved in more than just your company, be involved in your community. And the Down Syndrome Guild of Kansas City used to be First Downs for Down Syndrome. Gordon Docking was a longtime Kansas Cityan. He was a sportscaster. He has a Down syndrome son. He started the Down Syndrome Guild about 35 years ago. It had always been a parent-run organization, and he had the foresight about 10 or 12 years ago to say it needs to be bigger than that, and you need to have business people involved to further the endeavors of the charity. And so I joined. He asked me, to take up the call for helping people with Down syndrome, and it's been a really rewarding experience in that, I can do something that affects the lives of other people, and it's not hard. I mean, it's just giving of time and getting your friends and your connections involved from a monetary standpoint. And we've gone from about a $1 million annual budget to now we're up over 3 million. We've got a brand new building we're building in Mission, Kansas to further the education of Down syndrome people. And it's such a worthwhile cause, and I would implore everybody that's listening to get involved in something that you have a passion for. It's rewarding in the work you're doing, but it also pays dividends. It's, Jim talked a little bit about networking. That's a great way to network too. And so you've got, people on the board at the Down Syndrome Guild that are city leaders. And so I get to I get to be involved and have relationships with them, and it furthers my career. It helps me, promote my company, but I can also give back and help someone that needs the help more than I do, or more than my children do. So, again, get involved in something, because it does further your career.
Thank you, Mr. Frazier, for giving us insight to finding a passion that speaks to you. That's something that really speaks to me. I carry a very high passion to helping individuals who need help the most, especially children who need healthcare opportunities, or children who have different learning disabilities. That is something that I can relate to you on a personal level. Mr. Osborne, I'm going to move on to you. Do you anticipate that Washington, D.C. will achieve statehood within the next 10 years?
Yes, I do. In fact, I don't think it's going to take 10 years. I think we're going to see a brand new state here before this year is out. Tomorrow in the United States House of Representatives, there's going to be a final vote on the Washington, D.C. Admission Act, H.R. 51. We call it to be the 51st state. It is a bill that has been introduced in Congress for 30 years now in a row by Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton. It has never passed until last year, passed the House, but was shut down in the Senate. We know by counting votes that we're going to achieve that goal tomorrow. At some point, I was really definitely afraid that vote would take place today, and that I would not be able to participate in this wonderful event. But when I heard that the actual vote was going to take place on Thursday, I was overjoyed. It should happen. It should have happened a long time ago. 712,000 people live in Washington, D.C. We call D.C. our home. We are, in fact, residents of Washington, D.C., but we don't have any congressional representation. We get to vote for president, but we don't have anyone to go to say something else is wrong in our community. And that's just plain wrong. There are arguments, Olivia, for and against it. I believe that the arguments against making Washington, D.C. a state are far outweighed by the arguments for making D.C. a state. The people who live in D.C., we pay higher per capita federal income taxes than anyone else in the country, in the nation, because D.C. is a high earning state. We have currently, there are 20,000 people who are currently serving in the armed force, 20,000 men and women who serve in the armed forces, but they have no vote to say whether or not they want to go off to war, or that this country should go off to war. That's wrong. 40,000 people, there are 40,000 veterans who live in DC who have no vote. Just think whether you were born and raised in Washington, D.C., or you moved to Washington, D.C., you have no representation when you move to D.C. to actually live. And if you're a person who has served your country as a veteran, that's a difficult pill to swallow. I know that one of the strongest arguments I would say that our opponents have put forth is that the founding fathers didn't want the district to be a state. They did not want the influence of a state over the federal government. Well, I'd say to those people that there are other countries in the modern world where there are people who live in the capitals of those countries who actually vote. Could you imagine if the people in London couldn't vote because it's in some sort of a province, or the people who live in what's Canada's capital, Ottawa, maybe? If you live in Mexico City, well, you're in the state of, there's a state there. I don't know what it is in Mexico City, but you can't vote because you live in a state, and so it makes no real sense today. The issue is that there are those who do not like the way that they believe the people who live in Washington, D.C. would in fact vote. And that is a terrible thing to know that there are those who don't want you to vote because they don't like the way you would vote. Just in the past few months, we've seen approximately 250 brand new voting laws introduced across the country, primarily and almost exclusively in states that are that are run by Republican legislatures, despite the fact that there haven't been any voting fraud in this country. There wasn't any voting fraud in this country in the 2020 election. Without getting too political here, we still have 250 new laws, and someone should say, from an analytical perspective, why do we need 250 new laws about that prevent folks from voting if there's not any fraud? If the last administration came out and said, hey, this was the most secure election in history, perhaps. I don't understand the need for 250 new voting laws, except that we don't like the way people voted in November. And so I do believe that we'll be a state, and I do believe that it will happen. I came to the mayor's office 3 years ago, primarily and specifically to work on these issues. And I thought there would be a huge undertaking. I walk into the office and see this huge machine working to make DC a state. It was 6 people. 6 people. I'm thinking, this is it. We're going to make DC a state, the 6 of us. Where's the rest of our army? You know, but as we've gotten closer and closer and had more and more success, people are coming out of the woodworks and say, yeah, me too. That's right. We should not have 700,000 people without a right to vote, without a representative in Congress. So I do believe we'll be Bill State really, really soon. The Senate will be tougher to get through, of course, but the president has already signaled that he'll sign that bill once it gets to his desk. And we believe, and I believe, I'm certain, more certain now than I've ever been, that we'll do that this year.
Thank you, Mr. Osborne, for giving such insight on that related topic. We will now move on to Jimmer. Jimmer, I know that we have some professional golf fans in attendance today. Can you please share one story about a relationship you have made with a player during the time you spent at the PGA America?
Yeah, thanks, Olivia. I think everybody always wants a Tiger Woods or Phil Mickelson story, and they've been phenomenal for the game. But I'll go most recent. Was involved in the most recent Masters tournament in Augusta, and they honored Dr. Lee Elder as an honorary starter. He was the first man of color to play in that event. He was the first man of color to play in a segregated event in South Africa during apartheid. He was the first man of color to play in all 4 what's called golf's major championships. So the events that were involved there, where we were able to honor him, get to spend time with Dr. Elder and his family, but talking to other individuals that were there, we had several of our Black PGA members that were in attendance, others from the community, the mayor of Augusta, Georgia, the president of Payne College, which is a historically Black university and college in Augusta, and hearing the stories of what Dr. Elder meant to them and some of the things that he had to go through just to play a game, just to play a sport, the things that he had to go through, but really what he meant to the community and all that he has done throughout his life and all that he has accomplished. And then in the same week, you had an international winner, which was the first Japanese professional male player to win a golf tournament, and what that meant for the 7 million golf fans in Japan. I think it was an unbelievably historic week to get to spend some time with Dr. Elder and his family and hear some of the struggles that he had to go through. It really made me proud to be involved with the game that's bringing people together from all different walks of life. Golf doesn't have necessarily the best reputation in its history, but I think over the past couple of decades, we've had individuals and leaders that have been involved with it that are doing all they can to make it much more inclusive, much more diverse, and using the game for what it can be, which is a driver of good. I think the week in Augusta really, really kind of drove that home, to hear and see and spend time with Dr. Elder and his career and what it's meant to the Black community, those that are involved in golf, and then hearing from others over different things that we've done over the last few years really is kind of what makes it all worthwhile and rewarding to be involved in some small way. When you hear the stories and see the accomplishments of individuals like Dr. Elder and what he's had to overcome. So it's great to develop relationships with those that are maybe more well-known in golf circles to sports fans. I've been very fortunate to do that. but I think it's the moments being able to spend with the individuals that, quite frankly, have made such a difference on the bigger scale, I think, of life through their involvement in sport. And I'm just really fortunate that I've been able to be a very small part of that, been able to be involved in it, and it's been able to expose, my family to some of those teachings as well too.
Thank you, Jimmer, for sharing those aspects of that relationship and that story. We really appreciate hearing that. We will go ahead and then conclude for this evening as far as the questions. I personally want to thank you all for participating in tonight's event and sharing all your wonderful advice and aspects that you brought forth to us students here at Jewell and really showing us what it means to be a Jewell alumni. I appreciate you all for giving us such wonderful words to carry forth with us onto our next adventures off of the hill. So thank you again. I enjoyed my night with you, and I just want to let you know that it was a wonderful experience. So thank you.
Thanks, Olivia.
Thank you, Olivia.
Thank you guys for spending the evening with us virtually. If you will now join me before we go in a benediction. I invite you to pray in your faith as I do in mine. May tonight's celebration of achievement renew our drive and dedication to bettering our communities. God, help us to become aware of the needs of our communities and the world more broadly, and to work towards addressing them. Help us to use empathy to see the humanity in others, to lift them up and amplify the voices of the marginalized, to speak the truth and love in the face of adversity, and help us to remain ever curious so that we may understand the world more fully and help us to build a future that brings more equity and peace to the world. Amen. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. What a great night. This was fantastic. And Calvin, we are proud of you. We're proud, Dimple, of you. Jim and Mike, we're proud of you as an institution and proud that you're a part of this family on the Hill and the work that you're doing out in the community. So for those in the audience, if you didn't get a chance to listen and see the video of the convocation this morning, that's up on our website. You can still go and watch that. There was a lot of references, terrific stories from our honorees. So you'll want to go back and see that if you didn't get a chance to see it this morning. So thank you. Good night. This has been a great evening on the Hill.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Congrats, everyone.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yes, congrats to all of you. Have a good evening.